but the love of God is permanent. See the devil want you ignorant and blind stricken till you reach that flat line. Don't you know the time ticking? My mind tripping, I'm knowing not many making it. Everything will perish, so there ain't no need in chasing it. Don't put your faith in it.
So I'll just show you the scene right here. I've got these sunflowers, and I'm going to show you my technique for putting leaves on those stems, just like I did all along here. And then down in here you can see I've already done all those squash leaves down in there. I want to show you my choice of colors that I used in order to get that deep, more realistic look. Believe it or not, this color right here is my shadow color, and it's true green. It's just blue and yellow. There are brighter greens. If I were to get a green tinted paint that actually has green tint, it would be a little more saturated than this green, but this is bright enough for my purpose. That's the color that I'm going to use for shadows. Then for my darkest shadows, I used a mix of black and blue. The reason I added blue to this black is because wherever I have those dark shadows, I want also there to be a hint of blue to simulate the surrounding indirect blue light of the atmosphere. So just a little bit of blue goes a long way adding to that. So it's like maybe like an 80-20 mix of black to blue. Then I'm just using pure white for the light. Now I want to try to do a good job of explaining this. Anytime you have, let me move this camera so you can see what I'm about to do. Anytime you have a shadow that has more color saturation than the highlight of that object, such as on these leaves. Let's look at these leaves again. Okay, that green I showed you is this color right here. This color, and then this is that color mixed with that blue and black that I showed you. I could actually demonstrate some of this for you real quick, watch. Okay. This paint dries darker than when it goes on. So I'll put this on and show you. See, so I just mix it right on the wall. The point that I was gonna tell you, well, let me do this first. Okay. So I've got this, by mixing these two colors together, I've got a nice deep shadow that will be, it'll directly correspond to this green here because it has that green in it. So I think your eyes are real sensitive to these, you know, whether colors are related or not. So I'll do that, and then here, I'll change this leaf while I'm at it. I didn't like the shape of that one. It helps to know the shapes of things, but believe it or not, that's not really what gives it that realistic look. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are not accurate about the shapes of my leaves. So I've got, this is my deep shadow color. Then I'll go to my true green, and I'll use this as a shadow for these leaves, and I'll just put a little bit like right here, and when this dries it'll be darker too. I'll put this where the back side of that leaf is kind of flipping up. Just that little edge there will give the look just like these, of the underside of the leaf coming up. And I'll show you on these sunflower leaves too. By making the shadows more saturated. So saturated means less black or white. Whenever you add black or white or an opposite color, it mutes the color. It cancels it out. So if I add gray, then I'm taking the saturation down. It has nothing to do with how light or dark the color is. So by keeping those shadows saturated, it gives the look of translucency, like light coming from the object. Whereas if there's not a lot of saturation to the color, it looks more like a shadow or a dim light just bouncing off of the object rather than coming out from it. These leaves here are a good example. Look at this one. Okay, I'm gonna take you over here. We're gonna look at this little guy. Okay, so right here I've got layers of squash leaves again, and so you can see a less saturated green here, and this one is more saturated so that it looks like light coming through that leaf, but light only bouncing off of this leaf. Even though this is a shadow, it's still a dim light showing the green of the leaf. And then I have my bright highlight color here. I get asked a lot how I keep my paint from getting muddy. There was a question on one of the videos just the other day, and I want to address that. I want to show you, because I'm working, I don't mix the colors that I ultimately want to be on the picture. I mix the colors that are more extreme than I need to go, so that when I mix them together on the wall, it mixes them down to the result that I'm looking for. And by putting them directly on the wall, I can, and knowing where I'm going with it, it helps me to move quickly. So this paint starts to dry real fast. I'll put green on, and I'm just going to start putting together the way I want this leaf to be right here. So when I'm mixing the colors, I keep the paint heavier, and then when I get the color I want, then I'll tend to smear it out. But watch how I'll do this sunflower leaf here. I'll make the tip of the leaf dropping down right here, and I'll make it swooping up here, and then the stem will be coming behind it and just kind of coming down here onto this big stem. And then, believe it or not, all I have to do is add white for that highlight. So let me get some white and start adding this in. You see this green is still wet. It's drying, but it's still wet enough to work with. I'll come down here to the point. I'll leave some of this true green on those bottom edges so it looks like the leaf, like the underside of the leaf kind of flipping up. That. Come over here, this. And so to answer the question, how do I keep the colors from getting muddy? Well, I always want them to mix anyway. But if the brush does have too much of a color in it, I always just keep a big old rag handy, and I just wipe the brush on there. And because this is water-based paint, it dries real fast, it doesn't really tend to bleed together a lot. And a lot of times I'll just go over what's dry, already add another layer. It actually, I find it to be an advantage that it dries fast rather than a hindrance. Okay, so see, the back side of the leaf is bending up, my light's coming down, so the areas that are facing straight up are the ones that I want to be the brightest. And then I'll choose which side of the leaf is facing more directly toward the light. And I'm going to say that the light's coming from this way, hitting more this side, so I'll make this side brighter. Just keep adding white to that. But I don't need it to ever be pure white, so the mixing is good. This. There we go. See, because it's brighter in this one area in the middle, it looks like that's facing up, while these other areas are flipping up. This looks like the light's more, that true green gives the look of a leaf that the light is coming through it and casting that green. So the other way to do things where you wouldn't have the shadow saturated, like, because I can hear the question now, is like, well, how else would you lighten the color other than adding white? I mean, it becomes less saturated just by adding the white. But if I were to start with a less saturated shadow to begin with, my true color of the leaf, if I were not to make that a real bright green, and I wanted to make something look more opaque, like solid, so the light's not illuminating it, then I would just start with a less saturated true color, that green that I showed you. And I know that I've called it both the shadow color and the true color, so I don't want to confuse anybody. But all it is that I mixed a true green that's unaltered by black or white, and I used it as a shadow. I always have my true color, I have my shadow influence, and my light influence. None of those colors really appear in their truest form. That's the same way I did those logs, these logs over here. Look, see? See those logs? Same way I did those guys. Yeah, so if I was making an object more opaque, then I would start with a less saturated color so that when I added the white, I would also add the green. Actually, I could show you what I mean. Watch. Okay, so you can see this green now has, let me get the shape of my leaf kind of outlined here. I kind of liked that leaf behind it. That's a bummer that I went over that. Let's go like this. We'll at least keep what's left of that guy. Leaf will be here. Make this one nice and big. These two leaves are kind of going the same direction. Okay, so this is a different thing. Now watch how I take this shadow color. Okay, this is black and blue, and I'm going to put a little bit of this in that green. So now I have a less saturated color to begin with. Right here. And that is going to be the shadow that's being cast on this leaf by the leaf above it. Right here. So now I'll get more of the true green, and I'll mix that with white right here. So now as I'm doing my highlight's not only lighter, but it's now more saturated because this highlight here doesn't have that blue and black in it nearly as much. And I keep a bucket of water handy. I've got a bucket of water right here, see? And I'll just give my brush a real quick rinse, put it on that giant rag that I have handy. And then I'm going like this. Okay. Green, white. Knowing ahead of time exactly what colors I'm going to put where helps me a lot with how to handle this fast drying paint. And when you have it down to a system, you know, when you know this is where I'm putting it and this is why, it really helps you to be efficient. Okay. So this is my more saturated highlight color. So this is a different look on this leaf, where I have kind of the shadow on it now of the leaf above it. Not too far I want it to be. I want more shadow in there. So again, I'll just add the green plus this shadow color, and my brush still has some white in it. So you see they are mixing, but they're supposed to. Okay, we go like this. Okay, so that's shadow that's just on the surface of the leaf. But now let's keep going and finish this leaf. Okay, so we'll go our brightest green right here. Nice and bright. This is just the green and white. Go right here. I don't even worry about putting like the veins and all that in it at this point, because just the colors are going to tell the story good enough. Okay, and then in the front of the leaf, I'll use my true green like this and just put like it's flipping up on the end. See? And because that's a truer green, it looks like light kind of shining through from the other side. So then you see the difference between this shadow color and this shadow color is not how dark the color is, it's how saturated it is. I'll do a few more leaves. This will be fun because I'll show a few different basic leaf patterns that I like to use. I use these a lot. Here, let's go up here and do some.